Well, good day, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. You're here joining us at Epicenter in our live webinar. My name is David Doherty. I'm the Senior Sales Director with Epicenter, and I have the pleasure of moderating this webinar today. Now at Epicenter, we focus our services on ensuring Oracle HCM Cloud integrates seamlessly within your IT system landscape. And today, we're going to be going in and sharing our best practices around interfaces as a service. So for that, I'm very happy to introduce you in a second to Jean-Bart Hebenar, Managing Partner of Epicenter and Head of our Sales and Marketing. Now, he's a self-installed integration enthusiast with extensive experience in HR transformation and HR technology, as well as being the driving force behind Epicenter's shift to a cloud-based managed integration services company. So who better to take us on this journey today? But before we begin, I'm just going to take a couple of moments to explain a few things on how this session will be led. So firstly, we are recording this webinar. The link to the recording will be sent to you afterwards for future reference or for you to share with other people who you feel might be interested. All audio and video functions for participants are locked. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A functionality that you should see available on the right of your screen to jot down your queries, and we'll cover these at the end. Jean-Bart will be sharing his screen and already is, as you can see. If you're on a mobile device, if the text is a little bit small, you should be able to easily zoom in to view the slides in more detail. If anyone on a desktop, you'll be absolutely fine. Duration of this webinar, we expect to be around 15 to 20 minutes, and then we've got a little bit of time at the end for a brief Q&A. So with the housekeeping done, I'll now hand you over to Jean-Bart to take us through the concept of interface as a service. JB, over to you.
Thank you, Dave. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, so well, thanks for that impressive introduction. I couldn't have done that better myself, so thank you for that, Dave. Yeah, so welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be taking you through the slides today on interface as a service, a brand new concept that, well, actually not so brand new. We've been practicing for the last couple of years, but still in the market it seems quite new, and I'd like to yeah, give you some more information about that concept. Before I do that, and we take a deep dive into that topic, just a little bit about Epicenter and about our corporate profile. So Epicenter is all about Oracle. We are a Oracle partner. We're surrounded by other Oracle partners, play an active role within the Oracle HCM Cloud community. All our customers are Oracle-minded customers. So as this slide shows, we are fully surrounded by Oracle. That's not strange because after approximately 23 years of partnership, we've really grown into our partner ecosystem, Oracle partner ecosystem. We have approximately 40 HCM dedicated specialists across 12 countries that help us support our customers in over 65 countries, mainly with integrations. And that being said, integrations as a service. So just having said that, what do we exactly offer our valued customers? It's can really be split up between two major areas. One is managed application services, and the other one is managed integration services. Now, application services is your regular system implementations, which we're very familiar with, of course, over the years. In addition to that, we provide our average managed application support activities, and of course optimization efforts, everything to do with new releases, upgrades, introduction of new enhancements, adding new functionality to the application. All this falls under what we call managed application services. Now, on the managed integration services side, this is where we handle interface deployments, and that's also something that we are very renowned for as an integration specialist. Often we do this based on a concept which we have introduced in the market, which is called Fit for Cloud. It's our integration layer. It stands for Flexible Integration Tooling for Cloud Applications, and it allows us to quite rapidly deploy interfaces between systems. Often, once we have done this, we do so through configuration. And once we've done this once, we can reuse that interface, and therefore we call it a pre-configured interface, which adds a huge benefit to any customer that is receiving one of these interfaces from us. So that's the pre-configured interface concept. A little bit more about that later on. Finally, under managed integration services, something we handle as part of any deployment project is data migration. And this is obviously something that is a recurring activity. And because we have the flexible integration tool for cloud applications sitting in the middle of all our integration efforts, data migration is something that we can handle quite effectively, quickly, and accurately. So why we focus so much on integration? It's quite interesting, but the majority of the customers that we serve are large organizations that once we start doing business with them, we assess their system landscape, and they will have quite a complex system landscape already there, consisting of multiple ERP systems, payroll systems, for instance, custom applications that have been residing on their system landscape for ages, and are still being serviced by various third-party providers. In addition to that, because they're quite large, they usually have a history of mergers and acquisitions and have inherited quite some complex HR system architecture as a result. And there's often very good reasons as to why these HR systems or this inheritance cannot be decommissioned because of key business processes that are still supported by these legacy systems. And finally, we also quite often come across very proactive HR managers that have or suffer from a syndrome that we call the shiny new toy syndrome. And that's obviously looking at the HCM application market. There's so many shiny new toys out there that it's sometimes hard to resist, and procurement of these applications takes place and finally lead to even a more complex system architecture, which we will look at in the next slide. So here's a good example of what it kind of looks like when we step into any organization and see, wow, look at all these different applications, and some of them are HR related, others aren't, but hey, altogether, it looks like quite a complex architecture. You've got multiple point-to-point interfaces that you're going to have to put into place in order to exchange data. The data dependencies is between different systems. Sometimes the data or the interfaces that are implemented are bidirectional, so that even adds to the complexity. So there's a lot of things that come into play here, and as a result, you're really dealing with a very complex data architecture or integration architecture. Now, like software as a service, interface as a service is a trending topic for organizations, not just the big ones that we tend to deal with, but also small organizations. And why handle the burdens of maintaining all these integrations between all these different systems when these two can be managed by system implementation vendors like Epicenter? We have normally the necessary skill sets, the tool sets to manage all the different integrations, especially when you realize that the number of integrations that you're dealing with will only increase. Look at all the different system applications out there, that increases. It's only a logical consequence that the number of integrations also increase over time. So if you miss the point here of having a clear integration strategy, it's very easy to turn into one big, that's what we refer to, spaghetti architecture, which you really don't want. So, as Epicenter, we more or less stumbled into this area purely by demand. It wasn't really intentional, but it was really by demand of our customers. So we were quite known for our expertise in integrations. And when we started focusing on Oracle Cloud integrations, say about 5 years ago, we recognized the demand for extended support in the area of interfaces. So we were no longer just focusing on the implementation of interfaces, but also sticking around for providing that support on the interfaces we had implemented. So as with software as a service, many organizations are no longer interested in maintaining their back office systems from a technical perspective. And the same goes for integration as a service. So all the integrations, really, nobody's really interested in continuously maintaining all those integrations. As time goes by, integration requirements change. You might want to be involved from a functional perspective, but from a technical perspective, really, no. So we really saw an opportunity there to provide a service to our modern day customers that are primarily interested in running their interfaces from a functional perspective, viewing the logs maybe, making sure everything ran okay, but that's pretty much it. And this is where Epicenter comes in with the interface as a service concept, where we ensure that any errors that are running or appear on the log as a result of an interface running are resolved, they're analyzed, corrections are applied, and therefore finally we ensure an overall integration landscape runs smoothly on a day-to-day basis. Now there's of course many things that can go wrong during the running of an interface, and in order to focus on this a little bit more, I've come up with the following slide. A very simple slide, but assuming we have an interface between two systems, this interface will always have three major areas. Firstly, the sending system, which I've labeled as number 1 here, or the source system as we like to call it, transfers the data to a target or a receiving system. And then finally, we have everything in the middle where all the magic happens, which we call the integration hub. And I referred to that as fit for cloud earlier. And that's really the integration layer. So now as what we call the flexible integration tool for cloud application handles the complexity of when dealing with different integration requirements. But we assume that everything is managed okay on the source system side as well as on the target system side. So if you're going to offer a service like we do and really take on that risk of offering interface as a service and ensuring that everything runs smoothly in production, we need to be able to provide that top-notch service on all the different interfaces, not just one, but all of them. So some of those interfaces might be running multiple times a day, maybe sometimes once an hour. So we need to be very proactive in monitoring how this runs. Preferably before something goes wrong, we detect it. But when something does, it gets a little bit difficult and it can get pretty messy. Because when systems start running out of sync, it can get really messy. So it all comes down to a real clear orchestration of activities, well-documented support procedures, who needs to do what and by when. A clear escalation procedure is also very important. And yeah, it's basically just very important to have a clear outset of roles and responsibilities when it comes to, interface as a service. If you don't do this, it can only take a few seconds to cause a mayhem in data and desynchronization of your systems, and as a result, you could be spending months on just trying to correct all the issues that you've caused in a couple of seconds of not paying attention. So it's quite a risky business at times, and I'm sure all of you will have memories of such a scenario occurring within your organization. Those that didn't have probably deliberately erased that from their memories, and actually I don't blame you for doing so. So when providing interface as a service, let's have a look at what actually that entails. Before anything, the interface needs to be deployed, and we have a very clear deployment methodology in place. So as with many other type of implementations, we run through the plan, define, configure, test, deploy stages. And once that interface is in production and is maintained fully by Epicenter, which we then of course refer to as interface as a service. So from a managed services perspective, what does that mean? So in case of changes which occur in the source system, there may be an impact on the interface. So examples of changes to the source systems will include configuration updates to the application, or perhaps mass uploads that take place, errors in data entry, probably the most common one that occurs, or even bugs in the application, which finally cause a disturbance on the interface. So all these situations can have an impact on the interface, and therefore we need to proactively monitor what is going on in the source system. So it's extremely important we have clarity and visibility on how things are managed and configured there. So basically the same applies to the target system, which occurs, which could, have those the same type of issues. And therefore we need to have a clear arrangement with the target system vendor to have visibility, and any changes that occur are communicated to us in a timely manner. So how do you prevent all this? Well, it's very difficult, but what you can do is proactively run regression tests so that when you are aware that changes are being made, you can run trials, interface trials. You can, there's multiple ways of ensuring that there's a minimal impact going to be on your production runs of all your interfaces. It's quite a challenge, of course, but still something that we have to be very proactive in. And just to give you kind of an overview on what comes into play with all the different activities or support activities that usually that we have to cover in any service level agreement. Here's a snapshot of that. It's quite a lot of stuff, and really requires a dedicated team of interface support analysts to be on call around the clock to proactively monitor and ensure that the interfaces run smoothly in production. So really it's all that stuff that takes place under the hood of the integration engine. All right, so interface as a service offering. How do we go to market with this? Well, we really offer it very like the SaaS application on a subscription basis. So it's a license and services agreement that our customers sign with us. And that way we can also offer it on a pay-as-you-go type of concept, which makes it extremely scalable. We also offer flexibility in the support models, however, fully managed we would like to see it. There's still a lot of customers out there that would prefer to take on first level support, for instance, because it's a natural extension to an already existing support organization. And therefore we have a model in place where we train internal support organizations to take that first level of support on themselves, and where we mainly focus on second level support. But like I said, interface as a service is really meant to be fully managed, and we're seeing an increase interest in that type of concept. So just a quick recap of the value that interface as a service brings to the table. Definitely a reduced time to benefit. It's quite quickly that we can deploy an interface, and because the existing integration architecture is already there, it's quite an accelerated approach to allow us customers to benefit from all the various services that we provide alongside interfaces as a service. This naturally results in lower costs. The less deployment time or implementation time is obviously a lower cost, and of course the ability to share the total cost of ownership once we're talking about pre-configured interfaces that are used across many different customers. That's a big cost saver as well. Of course, our ability to tackle high complex system landscapes, we saw that earlier, how we're able to orchestrate the integration hub in between some key master data systems or primary systems of record and those secondary systems of record. And finally, there's definitely a lower risk involved in deploying any type of interface, simply because you're handling with the right expertise center group of interface specialists that know what they're doing, been around for a long time, and can really guarantee and warrant that higher success rate when it comes to interface deployment. And finally, a guaranteed consistency in approach. Also extremely important here is that, the methodology I explained earlier, the consistency in approach, the documentation, the templates, the support level agreement that we have in place. It all contributes to a total additional value that Interface as a Service has proven over the last couple of years already. With that, I've pretty much covered what I wanted to cover with you today, and over to Dave for any questions that may have been raised while I was blabbing away. Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Bart, for the insightful presentation. We do have a couple of questions, and if anyone has any more, then please feel free to add them to the Q&A. So the first one I have here is what's the average duration of a subscription?
Of an Interface as a Service.
To interfaces.
So yeah, we tend to mirror that with the subscription fees or the contract periods, the initial terms that Oracle tends to deploy as well, and that's usually a first initial period of 3 years, and then after that extendable by year. But yeah, there's some variation possibilities there, but usually we mirror that.
Okay, thank you. And it's nice to have one more here, which is how have your customers benefited from this model?
Yeah, well, this pretty much comes down to what I showed before, is where we step into an organization with a very complex system landscape, and there's a strong requirement for bi-directional integration, especially when you see that customers often kick off with the intent to have Oracle HCM Cloud, for instance, as the master system of record, but over time realize that there's a good reason why certain referential data and other systems might be leading, and therefore they have a strong requirement for an integration hub sitting in the middle that can kind of trade off that primary, secondary system responsibility of Oracle HCM Cloud. So there's a strong need for a quite a solid integration hub with all the services around it, and that's really where Interface as a Service has demonstrated its capability to add loads of value to our customers.
Okay, thank you. And just one more has been submitted in the meantime. Where is the Integration Hub hosted?
Integration Hub is hosted on the data centers of Oracle. So in this case, Oracle, what we call Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI. And the benefit of that is that it remains on the same data centers as the Oracle HCM Cloud database, for instance. So security compliancy officers love that, because that means data doesn't move outside of the Oracle domain, and all, for instance, GDPR regulations are already reusable on the data processing agreements that we sign with our customers. So music to the ears of the security compliancy officers, and thanks to OCI to make that possible.
Indeed, indeed. Looking through, I think there's no more questions at this time. So in which case then, with no more questions, that will conclude our webinar for today. I hope you've enjoyed your time with us and were able to take away something valuable. Here at Epicenter, we do host these webinars regularly, and this has been the latest in our series. And the best way to keep up to date is to follow us on LinkedIn. By following Epicenter on LinkedIn, you can do the following. You can be notified of any future webinars, where you can revisit our previous webinars on topics related to data migration, how to manage complex data flows, and more. And you can also keep up with all of our latest developments, including our white paper, customer success stories, and more. We will be doing webinars in the future, but as we hit the summer vacation period, we will be taking a short break from this webinar series. But never fear, we will be back in September, so look out for those. In the meantime, thank you very much for your participation, and have a great week ahead. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.